Hello, I'm Paul-André Durocher. I'm the Archbishop of Gatineau, Canada, and I'd like to present to you the pastoral letter that I published at the beginning of September entitled Christ, Us, Our Communities and Our Neighbourhoods, launching a 15-month synodal process in our Archdiocese. In this letter, I'm echoing some of the fundamental ideas that Pope Francis speaks about in his own letter, The Joy of the Gospel, which was written nearly 5 years ago. He invited the whole church to embark on a missionary journey. And when I first arrived in the diocese 7 years ago, 2011 to 2013, those first 2 years, I just went around the diocese doing pastoral visitations, spending a weekend in nearly every parish of the diocese, listening to people's comments and questions. At that time, I had kind of come to the realization that there were two big questions that were being asked. And one of them was, who's going to take our place, you know, as volunteers committed in the church? Because a lot of the lay men and women who were involved in organizing my visit were older people. And they're wondering, where are the young people behind us? Who's going to take our place? And the other question was, how do we hand on the faith to the next generation? How do we share our convictions, our love of Jesus, our love of the gospel? How do we evangelize? That was the second big question. And so following that, I thought it would be good to prioritize two main ideas for the following years. And the first one being, let's free the gifts. Let's find ways of accompanying people as they bring their gifts, as we encourage them, as we support them, you know, to generate a new spirit of involvement in our churches. And the second theme was share the Word of God, obviously. How do we share that? And with the Diocesan Pastoral Council over the past 4 years, we've been working on those themes. Last year, I wrote a letter where I picked up on the Pope's suggestion that we need to be involved in a more missionary turn or a missionary conversion, that our parishes cannot be centered on themselves, but need to be moving out towards the world. So yes, let's free the gifts, let's share the Word, but let's do it as we move out. But then a question arises, can we really do this? Are we able to do this? When, as I mentioned, our parishes, a lot of our people are getting older. Less people belong to our parishes. Our clergy, we're having to import clergy from other parts of the world. Thank God they are here. They enrich us with their gifts, but it raises the issue about how do we generate leadership within our parishes. And then our world in which we live, the climate of our neighborhoods is very often indifferent towards religion and sometimes hostile to religion. So how do we respond to the challenges that Pope Francis sets before us, the challenges that we set before ourselves? And so, facing those dramatic but very real questions, last year I spoke with the Priest Council, I consulted the Diocesan Pastoral Council, and eventually we had a diocesan meetup of the English sector and a major meeting of the French parishes called Le Carrefour, where I proposed that we enter into a process of discernment, a process of reflection, a synodal process. And this was backed up practically unanimously. People said that, yes, we need to be doing this in our parish now. What is a synodal process? Where does that expression come from? It's not one that we hear in the news often. Synod, the word synod, actually comes from two Greek words. The first part of the word, S-Y-N, which in Greek is pronounced syn, and sometimes is transliterated into English as S-Y-M. It means together. We see that in the word sympathy, sympathos, where we feel something together with someone else. Sympathy is to feel what the other person's feeling. We're feeling it with them. Or synchronicity, where synchronos, meaning at the same time. Synchronous events are events that happen at the same time. So the syn, with. And then the second part is od, comes from the Greek odos, which means a road, a way, a journey. We see that in the expression odometer, what measures the distance our cars have traveled, an odometer, we measure distance. So synodos means to journey together, to walk together. So synod, synodality, we speak of synodality in the church, is a fundamental concept in the church, that we journey together as a church. We reflect together. We discern together where the Spirit is calling us. So a synodal process is a process that allows us to come together, to reflect together, and to discern where the Spirit is calling us. At the level of the universal church, the Pope occasionally calls synods of bishops. Normally every 3 years. Right now, as I speak, as I record this, there is a synod of bishops dedicated to the theme youth, faith, and the discernment of vocations. And so 350 bishops from around the world are gathering to reflect on this theme. That's the Synod of Bishops. Synods can be held at a local level, at a diocesan level, diocesan synods. So nearly more than 30 years ago, in 1985, Bishop Prou, who was then the Bishop of Gatineau, he decided to organize a synodal process in the diocese, which was titled Taking the Church to Heart. It focused on 3 themes: belonging, co-responsibility, and the option for the poor. Well, 30 years later, the time has come for us to renew this experience. The difference is that no theme has been chosen. The questions are so broad, the issues we're dealing with are so complicated that the Diocesan Pastoral Council felt that it would be good that we not set a theme, that we just go to the people and say, what are the issues that burn in your hearts? What should we be talking about in the church right now as we face the future? But we've identified 4 elements that we should never forget as we enter into the synodal process. And those 4 elements are named in our theme. Christ, of course, he's the reason that we're here. It's Christ who calls us together. Us, each one of us, which his or her own story and doubts and convictions and faith, each one of us is involved in this story. Our communities, because Christ calls us together to form communities of faith, basically parishes, though there are other forms of church communities. We'll focus a lot on parishes during this process. And our neighborhoods, because our communities, our parishes, they're situated in a neighborhood, and we can never forget that world in which we are living, because we're called to send to that world. Jesus said, you, my disciples, are to be a light for the world and a salt for the earth. So how can our communities be light and salt for our neighborhoods? These 4 elements should never be forgotten as we do this process. So what will be the goal of this 15-month process? Well, to really open ourselves to the Spirit as we listen to each other and seek what God's will is. How can we become that missionary church that Jesus wants for us? A church involved in the world, willing to try to change that world according to God's vision. How do we do that? And how will we proceed? Well, we're going to follow a 3-step process. Each step will take a few months, 3 phases, you could say. So the first phase will be kind of telling our stories. Who are we? What is our situation? Let's see what our reality is. That first phase will start with the official launching of the process on October 11th in the diocese, and on Sunday, October 14th in our parishes, and will last until Christmas. So that first phase will allow us to write a document at the diocesan level, kind of situating our reality, describing our reality. Then in the second phase, we'll reflect on that reality from the point of view of our deep faith convictions, of what we believe the church should be about. We'll kind of struggle with some of the issues that we're concerned with. We'll speak about what we dream of. This will be our second part of the journey, you could say, and that will extend from January until June. And in June, at the end of that, again, we'll write another document where we situate or clarify what the main issues are for us. And then in the third part, next fall, we're going to gather to give ourselves a plan of action, to make decisions, propositions that say, here's where we need to be working together. The 55 parishes of the diocese and the diocesan team, we should really focus on these issues, these questions, and this is how we're going to move forward. So this will be the overall process. During each phase, we really want to involve as many people as possible. We want to hear the voice of the people of God speaking. And so, for example, in this first phase, we have 4 elements to make that happen. One, we're developing an internet survey that is addressed to the general population. Anybody who wants to answer can answer this survey personally. There will be a website where you can go to, we'll make it known, and it's a site where you click answers that will allow people to tell us how they envision, their lives or the church, faith in their lives. Is it relevant? Is it not relevant? What's important for them? This can help us understand a bit more our neighborhoods. That will be a broad survey. And then we'll have consultative meetings in our parishes that will be led by members of our parish that will invite people to gather and to reflect on their parish's reality. We'll also have consultative meetings with focus groups because we want to make sure that we're not missing certain voices that might otherwise get lost in the mix. So we want to have a focus group with young people, focus group with older people. We want a focus group for parents. We want a focus group for immigrants, for community leaders. We even have a focus group in the local jail and in our hospitals. So we can really hear how people see the church and what their hopes or their expectations are. And finally, we're going to be preparing statistical reports. The diocesan team is gathering this for each parish in the diocese that will allow us to see how over the past 20 years our parishes have evolved. All of this, we'll gather all of this together and we'll make, the diocesan team will prepare a general overview of the life of our diocese, of the 55 parishes that make up our diocese and the challenges which face us. There's a diocesan, there's a site. You can address any comments or any suggestions you have to synod, synode, at diocesegatineau.org. So if you have an idea, if you have a comment, if you have a proposal, you can send it to us. And at the end, there's a prayer that we've composed. It's on the last page of this pastoral letter. We invite you to find the copy of it in your parishes and to pray it along with us generally. 2 final comments. A few people have told me, Bishop, we're doing this consultative process, but I've been involved in consultative processes before where the leadership has already determined what we'll be doing and where we're going, and it's just kind of a PR exercise. Well, I want to guarantee you of one thing. I have no idea where this process is leading us. I have no idea what the final result will be. I'm not even sure how we're going to do the 2nd and 3rd stages. We'll develop that as we go along, according to the responses we get from you. I have no idea because I'm convinced that the Spirit speaks through the people of God. And as Bishop, I need to listen to that voice. Sure, I have my convictions, I have my concerns, but they're only part of the reality of this diocese. And I have my role as Bishop. My role as Bishop is to make sure we don't get on a track that is contrary to the gospel or to the tradition of the church. I'll make sure of that. But that leaves a lot of space to discern where the Spirit is calling us, and I need to listen to you. And this is why I ask each one of you to be involved in this process, so that together we can allow God to surface among His people his dream for us and how we should be going forward. And the second comment is, and I've heard this from a few of our smaller parishes, Bishop, whatever plan comes out, we won't be able to do it. What's the point? We're just a handful of people who still attend Mass on Sundays in our parish, and we're all older, and we don't have the resources or the energy anymore. Why involve ourselves in something that we won't be able to implement? Well, this is really important. I think that whatever plan we establish has to be one that corresponds to the reality of our parishes. What's the point of elaborating a plan that we can't put into action? So I need to hear, especially the voices of the smaller parishes, of the parishes that feel that they're coming to the end of the rope and they're not clear what their future is. It's important that your voices be heard so that we can hear that and that we can say, okay, so what do we do with this? Where do we go with this? Let's talk about this. It's important that the smallest communities, as well as the big communities, be very involved in this process. And this is why the elements even that we've developed, the resources, are meant to be adapted for the small groups and for the big groups, for the parishes that find themselves vulnerable and for the parishes that find themselves rich with vitality. We want to be able to hear everyone. So thank you for listening. Thank you for being part of this. And I pray, and I invite you to pray with me, that God will really bless the synodal process and help us move towards the future with confidence, knowing that Jesus, the one who calls us together, walks with us all the way.